afternoon, everyone. Por protocolo me dirigiré en inglés en el marco de esta ceremonia. Ladies and gentlemen, buried and resting in peace in Mount Hope Catholic Cemetery in Toronto, and far away from his birthplace in Jalisco, Mexico, Private Rafael Rodriguez is one of only a few Latin Americans who actively participated in the Canadian Armed Forces at World War I. The Mexican combatant fought not only an international armed conflict happening more than 100 years ago, but also a long battle for recognition of his participation and in the Allied military efforts to win the Great War. Mexico and Canada have historically shared common values in their international relations, and Mexican nationals were trusted by the Canadian military forces to go alongside them to war. Historical records indicate that Private Rafael Rodriguez had previous training during the Mexican Revolution and that he traveled at his own expense to join up with Canadian military efforts. He was recruited to the 42nd Infantry Battalion and sent to the European battlefield for a year and a half. He was injured during the armed combat and returned from overseas. A long fight endured thereon for the recognition of his rights as a veteran of war. Rafael Rodriguez's participation in World War I alongside Canadian soldiers undoubtedly placed a first stone on the growing multiculturalism and diversity of today's Canadian Armed Forces. On this remembrance ceremony dedicated to Private Rafael Rodriguez, we recognize the valuable initiative of Captain Rey Garcia-Salas, as well as the efforts led by Mexican community leaders such as Rodrigo Mendivil, to place a spotlight on his story and for the benefit of present and future generations of members of the Canadian Armed Forces and for the maintenance of international peace and security. Thank you.
Thank you to the Cultural Attaché Mendivil for your words today, and we would like to now invite the Consul of Costa Rica in Toronto, Honorable Jorge Umaña.
A énormément contribué à la fondation et à la formation de la société canadienne. Nous sommes un groupe de plus dynamique, travailleurs, qui affrontent la vie avec courage et se lèvent chaque jour pour donner le meilleur. Quel meilleur exemple de cela est représenté dans l'acte que nous commémorons aujourd'hui. Nous aurons le soldat Rafael Rodriguez, c'est avec lui les soldats d'origine latino-américaine qui ont donné leur vie pour salvaguardar la liberté dans laquelle nous vivons. Desde el Consulado de Costa Rica en Toronto, entendemos la profundidad de esas acciones. Entendemos también la necesidad que existe de que los latinoamericanos se conviertan en agentes del desarrollo de los lugares a donde están. La promoción humana nos debe conducir a una sociedad dispuesta a mantenerse en proceso de revisión, a cambiar esquemas y a sacrificarse. Estamos construyendo, de alguna manera, una nueva revolución. La gente irá hacia donde haya esperanza. La promoción humana es la consecuencia de la fe en la dignidad del hombre. No es un secreto que la carrera armamentista, la crisis energética, económica, las posibles amenazas de guerra son preocupaciones reales de aquel tiempo y del presente. Para unos, este es el anuncio del fin, pero para nosotros, convencidos del curso ascendente de la historia hasta su plenitud, este es uno de los momentos estelares de la humanidad. Sufrimientos y angustias, sí, pero también lleno de esperanzas. This greatness is what adorns and persecutes the people who fought and defended the freedom, who embraced the Canadian flag and gave themselves to the war in continuous acts of courage. I come from a country where we don't have an army. We are characterized as a people that contributed to peace and respect the rule of law and the freedom. We have committed ourselves to permanently fight in the field of ideas for the prevalence of the democratic system. This does not mean impartiality in the political field. Rather, Costa Rica reaffirms over and over again its faith in the social conception that has shared and shares with democracies such as those represented by Canada and Mexico. But those fundamental principles, in the middle of the last century, were defended by many people, among them those whom we honor today. In the 21st century, it belongs to our generation to ensure that our society does not become infected by intolerance, fratricidal hatred, overflowing passion, and war that divides and sacrifices people. Restore tranquility, preserve the peace, walk an important distance away from the whole, and maintaining the hope that our forces will be all towards avoiding the loss of life due to the armed conflicts. Garantizar la libertad y el reparto justo de los frutos del crecimiento entre las naciones demanda hoy la formación de alianzas basadas en valores y principios compartidos de buena fe, encontrando ideales que nos permitan trabajar juntos por el desarrollo. Estos hombres latinoamericanos que hoy honramos son un vivo ejemplo de lo que es capaz la región latinoamericana. Sus hijos, un reflejo de sacrificio. Es Latinoamérica parte de la búsqueda de la paz, del llamado para combatir la pobreza. Estamos ante una de las mejores horas de triunfo de nuestra herencia. Y por ello, precisamente, debemos saber mostrar la grandeza de nuestra humildad, la fuerza de nuestros principios. Muchas gracias.
Thank you to the Honorable Consul Umaña for the words. Esta ceremonia se está llevando a cabo porque a través del tiempo pasaron días y semanas y meses y años y lustros y décadas. Incluso pasó un siglo completo sin recordar ni reconocer a estos soldados que cayeron para que hoy podamos disfrutar de la libertad. Y alguien tenía que pararse y preguntarse si habían algunos latinoamericanos que habían luchado por la libertad desde esta gran nación. Y hubo alguien que decidió hacer la investigación y profundizar un poquito más. Y en el día de hoy, esta persona, queremos invitarlo porque despertó en él lo que hoy lleva al principio de un proceso de ceremonias en el que estamos reconociendo a personas que por un siglo habían sido olvidados. I would like to invite Captain Rey Garcia-Salas. He's the head of the Latin America Heritage Month Planning Committee for the National Defense and the lead historian who helped not only discover the Latin American soldiers, but he brought light to them. So please welcome the Captain Rey Garcia-Salas.
Aplauso, aplauso.
Good day, my name is Captain Rey Garcia-Salas. I have been a member of the Canadian Armed Forces for over 20 years. I am very proud to belong to an institution that stands for multiculturalism, diversity, gender equality, and inclusion. Before I continue on, I'm gonna read a poem that I am dedicated in this time in Spanish to all Latin American soldiers of the First and Second World War wearing the Canadian military uniform and fighting to defend Canada. It is called Más allá del océano y alborada. Cristales rotos cortando el viento sin cesar y acariciando piezas desperdigadas por doquier. Atadas a hogares más allá de las sonrisas y llantos de los niños atrás de las paredes derrumbadas por la malicia y avaricia de seres sin rostros. Hijos jugando con las siluetas de los padres, padres ausentes, llenando sueños de libertad en su alma, resistiendo el embate para saciarnos la sed de esperanzas en el futuro. Veteranos que impregnaron sus huellas y pintaron figuras rojas deslizantes con sus heridas, dejando sus recuerdos en las calles más allá del océano y alborada. Ellos que guardaron en su alma el sufrimiento y hambre, amarrando los días con las noches, quedando las noches iluminadas con los espíritus de los que partieron y no se fueron, dejando su resiliencia como legado para que ahora vivamos en paz y libertad y así portar amapolas en nuestros corazones. Encendamos una vela en nuestras mentes para honrar su memoria. Today, we make history. This is the first ever Latin American Remembrance Ceremony in the Canadian history books at Mount Hope Catholic Cemetery. Today, we are honoring the Latin Americans who came to Canada voluntarily, joined the Canadian Armed Forces, and fought in the First and Second World War. Today, the entire nation remembers these heroes for all their sacrifices. They choose to join one of the best nations in the world to fight for our peace and freedom. They demonstrated compassion, braveness, courage, and loyalty when fighting alongside other Canadian soldiers as one unit. All these soldiers are heroes who left us a legacy of inclusion that now bring us closer together. In 2010, Captain Milton Hoyos and I started organizing the Latin American Heritage events. Every year, I do a national presentation called Fitting into a Multicultural Institution of the Canadian Forces. Last year, I presented my research of 3 years on the participation of the Latin American soldiers in the First and Second World War. Then I created a Latin American Soldiers Committee in Canada in order to organize events to honor their memory and sacrifices. Today, we host a mass service at San Mónica Parish in honor of Private Rafael Rodríguez, who was Roman Catholic. And now we are hosting the second Latin American Remembrance Ceremony here at Mount Hope Catholic Cemetery, where Private Rafael Rodriguez is buried. Many Canadians and Latin Americans do not know that Private Rafael Rodriguez was a fine-class soldier who served overseas in the First World War with the 42 Battalion in Montreal for nearly a year and a half. He was born on October 24th, 1894 in Ocatlan, Guadalajara, Jalisco, Mexico. He voluntarily enlisted in the Canadian Forces in Windsor, Ontario, on August 11, 1916, age 21. He returned to Canada disabled due to shrapnel wounds during battle. On the January 20th, 1919, he died alone in Toronto, far away from his friends and family. He died due to his wounds, pneumonia, and tuberculosis, at a time when the Spanish flu was everywhere. When Secretary Joseph Warwick, Soldiers' Aid Commission of Ontario, was notified of this case, he said if they had only been advised sooner, he might have been able to give more service to this very deserving case, as he was entitled to the war gratuity, which would have relieved his condition. At the end of he stated, "I am sincerely sorry that we did not have the opportunity of helping him." Private Rafael Rodriguez Finally, you can rest in peace, brother in arms. We are gathering here today around your grave to honor you and to honor all your sacrifices. Your memory will live with us today and tomorrow. The Latin American Remember ceremony and events focus to honor the memory of the Latin American soldiers by giving them a historical identity. The goal is to keep their memory alive by having these Remember ceremonies once a year. The Latin American society is based on having a strong connection in the community, family members, and our ancestors. I invite our community to attend these events in order to honor and learn more about our past. Canada is so diverse historically and ethnically. There are many influences that make us the larger Canadian culture, and these Latin American heroes help Canada become what it is today. Thank you all of you, and long live the memory of Private Rafael Rodriguez and these Latin American soldiers that for us are heroes. Thank you.
As we said before, today we are making history, remembering, recognizing las personas que hicieron sacrificio para que nosotros vivamos en un país con mucha libertad. So thank you, Captain Rey, especially for dedicating part of his life for that duty that he called himself and decided we have to give the proper recognition for these soldiers. And today we are celebrating it. So thank you very much. Let's give him a round of applause again to Captain Garcia-Salas. So as well, I would like to ask to join us for the last post of a moment of silence, followed by the rose. A moment of silence, please. I would like to invite as well, once again, Captain Rey Garcia-Salas to read the Act of Remembrance.
Acto de recuerdo. No envejecerán como los que quedamos envejecemos. La edad no los desgastará, ni los años los condenarán. Al ponerse el sol y por la mañana los recordaremos. Todos juntos los recordaremos. Act of remembrance. They shall grow not old, as we that are left grow old. Age shall not weary them, nor the years condemn. At the going down of the sun, and in the morning we shall remember them. We shall remember them.
We will now proceed to laying the wreath. On behalf of Canada, all veterans, the Canadian Armed Forces, in memory of all those lost, the Consul of Costa Rica, Honorable Jorge Umaña, and the Captain Rey Garcia-Salas. On behalf of Mexico, Rodrigo Mendivil, Consul of the Embassy of Mexico, accompanied by Rosario Arce, on behalf of the Latin American community. On behalf of the human rights organization in Canada, Escalando Montañas, David Aguilar, and Ana Maria Salas. On behalf of la Casa Cultural Peruana, Betzabel Monterrosa. If any other organization or even if any other country would like to lay a wreath, please do so now. Si alguna otra organización o algún otro país quisiera también poner una corona de flores, por favor lo puede hacer ahora. I would like to invite Bexabel Monterrosa to read the poem Fatality by Ruben Dario, who is a Nicaraguan poet, a journalist, a diplomat, and a patriot. Ruben Dario was born in 1867 and died in 1916, whose career spans dozens of countries. Dario is considered the founder of the Hispanic language literary movement known as Modernism, that flourished at the end of the 19th century, and he had a major and lasting influence in the 20th century Spanish language literature and journalism. Please welcome Betsabe Monterrosa.
The tree is happy because it is scarcely sentient. The hard rock is happier still. It feels nothing. There is no pain as great as being alive, no burden heavier than dust of conscious life. To be and to know nothing, and to lack away, and the dread of having been, and future terrors, and the sure terror of being dead tomorrow, and to suffer all through life and through the darkness, and through what we do not know and hardly suspect, and the flesh that tempt us with bunches of cold grapes, and the tomb that await us with its funeral sprays, and not to know where we go, nor whence we come. Dichoso el árbol que es apenas sensitivo, y más la piedra dura, porque esa ya no siente, pues no hay dolor más grande que el dolor de ser vivo, ni mayor pesadumbre que la vida consciente. Ser y no saber nada, y ser sin rumbo cierto, y el temor de haber sido y un futuro terror, y el espanto seguro de estar mañana muerto, y sufrir por la vida y por la sombra, y por lo que no conocemos y apenas sospechamos, y la carne que tienta con sus frescos racimos, y la tumba que aguarda con sus fúnebres ramos, y no saber a dónde vamos ni de dónde venimos.
Muchas gracias a Betsabe Monterrosa por el poema Lo Fatal de Ruben Dario. Al concluir esta ceremonia inaugural, me gustaría tomarme un momento y hablar sobre la importancia y la representación de este evento. Este es un evento que ha honrado la memoria de los soldados latinoamericanos, especialmente dándole una identidad histórica, algo que no había sucedido en todo un siglo. Las futuras generaciones, como nosotros en el día de hoy, deben estar y estamos comprometidos a darles todo lo que es el amor a nuestro país, a Canadá, país que nos ha abierto las puertas, y que sepamos también que nuestros antepasados han defendido nuestro país, no solamente con la voz como lo hacemos en el día de hoy, sino también con sus vidas, defendiendo a Canadá desde la Primera Guerra Mundial. Nosotros somos parte intrínseca de este momento para recordar que realmente pertenecemos a un Canadá que le ha dado bienvenida a nuestra gente desde hace siglos. We honor this forgotten or unwritten part of the history of Canada. We honor a group of soldiers who came to Canada and familiar with the language, like many of us, and took arms to fight for something greater, to fight in battlefield far, extremely far from home. We must look at the courage, the selflessness this belief is doing their part in the global community. And we as well should be thanking them for these sacrifices. Today we saw them, today we hear them, and forever we will remember them from today on. On behalf of the organizing committee, I would like to thank for all of you to attending and especially invite you back to the main benchwork building for a live refreshment that we are going to be having. But today, as well, we want to thank the Embassy of Mexico representing traditional dancing for us to enjoy. And as we mentioned in the start of this ceremony, I would like to thank the Embassy of Costa Rica for the support also. And I would like to thank the Embassy of Mexico for helping us with this ceremony. I would like to as well welcome the Embassy of La República Argentina as the co-hosts for the second annual Latin America Remembrance Ceremony and the second Sunday of October 2023. Before we go, even though this is a solemn ceremony and we are so extremely serious knowing and remembering this soldier, we should be shouting as victory and celebrating that because of him and many people like him, especially from the Latin American origin, today we are enjoying this kind of Canada. Vamos a darle un fuerte aplauso para decirle muchas gracias, sinceramente muchas gracias por ser parte de este país, por venir a luchar por este país y por también ser de los primeros que vinieron a sacrificar sus vidas para que hoy ustedes y nosotros podamos disfrutar de la hermosura y de la libertad que tenemos en este país. Con un fuerte aplauso terminamos nuestra ceremonia y con este fuerte aplauso también vamos a tomar the class picture junto con the Private Rafael Rodríguez para recordarlo. Primero el aplauso y después la foto.
¡Viva Rafael Rodríguez! ¡Viva! ¡Viva México! ¡Viva! ¡Viva Canadá! ¡Viva!
Familia, muchísimas gracias y que Dios los bendiga. Buen día. Vamos a tomar la foto ahora, por favor.
Podcast Voces del Perú presentó el segmento de noticias transmitido en vivo vía Facebook y YouTube de la Casa Cultural Peruana desde Toronto, Ontario, Canadá. Podcast Voces del Perú presented the news segment transmitted live via Facebook and YouTube of Casa Cultural Peruana from Toronto, Ontario, Canada.